What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. I am here in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. So glad you decided to join us today for another episode of the Real Estate Investing Live podcast. We interview the very best real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders all throughout this great country. Today is no different. We have an incredible guest. I'm very excited to talk to Mr. Jason Medley, the founder of CG, the Collective Genius Mastermind. How's it going today, Jason?
Today is excellent, my friend. Just like I was telling you before we jumped on here, just got back from a trip from San Diego, brushing up on my marketing skills, if you will. So a little bit slow because of the 3 hours I lost coming home, but we're going to bring it today either way. So, I'm ready. I'm ready to have some fun, do whatever we can to serve your audience, to serve you, and have some fun, hopefully help some people make some money.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you put it that way. I want to have some fun too. I feel, and I mentioned this to you off air. I've heard you in probably 3 or 4 interviews, and I just feel like I'm always left like, I feel like I don't really know everything that I want to know about this conversation. And so hopefully I'm going to prod you a little bit more and get some more out of you. Right. I want to start off from just the very basic level with you. I know you've been in the real estate game for a long time. You weren't always doing CG, obviously.
Right.
We're going to spend most of the show talking about masterminds, masterminding. We've talked about masterminding in the past on our show, but never from, as you call yourself, the OG, the original real estate investing mastermind, at least nationwide, that CG has become super known for. Tell everybody, Jason, who you are. I know most people know who you are, but who you are and how you actually got your start in real estate.
Sure. First of all, my name is Jason Medley. I reside in sunny Tampa, Florida. I'm a father to my little 5-year-old Ava. She's a little rock star in the making, sweetheart of a little girl. Also a husband to my amazing wife, Jennifer. I just came home from the trip. She rocked it while I was gone, surprised me. She took one of the bedrooms we weren't really using at the house and turned it into an office for me. I don't know if that was for me or for her, right? I think she was trying to get me off the kitchen counter, like I sit at the island every day. So I think it was a 50-50 deal, right? But no, amazing wife, Jennifer Lombardi. And then, so I have been in real estate for, it seems like forever, I guess about 18 or 19 years now. Started out as a retail mortgage broker back in 2000. I won't bore you guys with my story of how I got here. I'll try to make it short and sweet, but real estate broker back in 2000 to 2006, 2007, and then I got the KO, right, like most people did, and it started here in Florida and California, so a big illustrious punch to the face and hit the zero button. But it's actually probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. I think every entrepreneur's got to get their lights knocked out, or you got to lose the belt and regain it, right? You're not really a true champion until you retain the title. And so my title was taken away back in 2007, 2008. But really one of the best things that ever happened to me because it allowed me to really dig in to figure out what some of my talents were. So retail brokerage went in the dumps. Florida came to a standing halt. And I was like, what do I do with this skill set that I've evolved over the last 7 or 8 years, right? So I started negotiating short sales for real estate agents because kind of similar process. You collected all the same docs, yada, 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 but I hated it. Completely hated it because I like to make people happy. I like to provide value to human beings, and I never felt like I was because no matter how good a job you did, if banks took 1.5 years to process a short sale, the realtors weren't happy, right? You're a cool cat, but this is taking 1.5 years, and I'm not happy. So I couldn't routinely be involved in a career where I wasn't making people happy, and so then I started flipping short sales, which is kind of almost a thing of the past nowadays, right? But started flipping short sales, and at the time you could use your end buyer's money to purchase the A to B transaction. And then one day, what I thought was the most treacherous thing that could ever happen to me, it turned out to be one of my biggest gifts. And that is I was flipping a home buying it for $402,000, I think reselling it for $495 the same day. And on Wednesday, the title company called and they said, Jason, we got a problem. And I was like, what's the problem? She said, you need to bring $402,000 to closing. You can't use the end buyer's money. And I said, yeah, we do have a problem, don't we? Because I don't have $402,000. I was just trying to get back on my feet. So good thing is I called a friend of mine. I was actually just texting him before we got on the phone call. Mr. Stephen Dahl here, just texted him and said, man, I need 402 grand. He's like, for how long and how much do I, I said, I need it for a couple of hours and I'll give you back 2 points. And of course, as soon as that happened, right, I sent me 402. I sent him back like 4010. And his first question was, can we do that again? 2 points in a day. That's usually the next question, right? Can we do that again? So that started me really getting back on my feet and back into the ranks by opening a company called Visionary Financial, which was really one of the forefathers, if you will, in the transactional funding space. I grew a pretty large audience there, and that's really what helped me transition into the mastermind business, because it was really a side project for me, Brian, at first, kind of like I was in another mastermind just for marketing. And a friend of mine actually said, like, Jason, how come you don't do this for the real estate investing space? And I was like, that actually sounds like a pretty good idea. And so it was just initially a way that, hey, I can kind of do this as well. And I had the funding company, and I could see like this guy's borrowing money from us 8 times, and this gal's borrowing money from us 12 times a month. And so I had a list of players that were kind of at my fingertips, and I invited them all to come to CG. And that was, gosh, I don't even know, I guess 9 years ago. And there was maybe 9 or 10 of us in a room to start. And here we are 9 years later. And after this next meeting, which we have in March 18th, which is about 3 weeks from now, we will probably have 132 plus Rockstar members at the end.
So, Jason, I appreciate you sharing your story, by the way. Thank you. I think it's going to help give us perspective as we move forward. But
Sure.
It sounds like to me that when you started the transactional funding business and you said that you grew a large audience when you were doing that, it sounds like to me if anyone's going to start a mastermind, you have to be somewhat influential to begin with. And is that where it started? Is that where you kind of started to gain some of your influence?
Yeah, and I would actually I can add some flavor to that, right? It certainly helped that I say, do you have the right assets, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean dollars in the bank, but do you have a list? Do you have influence, right? Like, do you have a network? Do you have an existing product that you sell to a customer who could be advantaged, right, by being involved in a mastermind? And so in my situation, one of the ways that we grew the funding company was I would do webinars, case studies, right? Like I would bring a customer of mine. For example, there's a gentleman, I think he's got his own podcast now, Jason Lucchese. We'd bring Jason on and we talk about like how we found the deal and how he negotiated the deal and how we funded it. And we would tell everybody, to go out and when you find the deal and you're ready to rock and roll, to give us a call. And then I teamed up with a couple of other guys back then who were selling the short sale courses. I remember Chris McLaughlin. And so I would be on all their webinars. And so I kind of had a, if you will, influence following, whatever you may say, which kind of enabled me to get some eyeballs initially. The crazy thing is that the bigger my organization has become, Collective Genius, the less I don't have an audience. I don't have a list. I don't I'm not on social media all the time. Like I don't really do any of that stuff anymore. So it's kind of gone, but I've really focused on, I guess you would say I have a list. I have a very, very good list of the best in the real estate space. And so, that, yeah, I think you either have to have influence or sometimes like I helped a buddy of mine start a mastermind. It's not real estate specific. It's any, whatever business you're in, you can join. And he didn't really have a list or influence, but what he did was he had a company where he was building websites. Who owns the website? Typically the entrepreneur that owns the business. And so he used the platform in his business where he was selling websites to begin asking the customer, hey, in addition to me selling you your website, I'm going to invite you to a mastermind. Right? So those are some examples of how to get up and running.
And It sounds easy, but it's definitely not. We've had conversations about how, I know I've heard someone ask you, what do you do in, the mastermind's only like a week. What do you do in the other, 48 weeks? We can get into that, but that's not really where I want to go with this. Like,
Sure.
take me back to that first room, that first initial meeting. I'm sure you remembered. I've heard you say that it was, in your mind, it was a disaster for you personally. Take me back to that room. I don't want you necessarily to name names unless you just want to. Did you really feel like we had the best of the best in that room? And I know you were still trying to figure it out. You said it was a side project. You're still trying to navigate. What does this even mean? What kind of value are we trying to get and provide at the same time? Take me back to that first room, Jason. And
that's the best way for me to bring value to your folks right now is to tap into what you just said about the value we're trying to give and what we're trying to get. And at that time, I was, I think there's a lot. At that time, I was 36. I'm 46 now, and I think there's a tremendous amount of wisdom. There's a certain level of maturity that takes place for a man up until his 30s, and then there's a shift. I think in your mid 40s where wisdom begins to seep into your life. And
apparently, I'm not there yet because I'm only 39.
Well, you're about to get there, brother. I can tell you. You'll get some wisdom and some glasses really quick. You're going the wrong direction on the hair, though. So I can't help you.
Brother, the hair was since 19. I've dealt with that. Yeah,
you wear it well though. You got a nice round head. You're rocking it. See, I'm bumpy. I couldn't do it. But I think that's the biggest thing to hone in on because, like I said, it was a side project, and I thought that, okay, well, I'm going to put some smart people in the room and just the magic will happen, right? I hadn't thought about what value am I going to bring them or what value are they going to bring me or any of that because I thought that was enough value, right? Like, you just put some smart people in the room and it'll be okay. And I think that was probably the biggest learning lesson for me is that's not enough and that's not okay. You and I kind of had a pre-interview prior to jumping on here, and I shared something with you. It's kind of a motto that I have that I've developed because I didn't have it 19 years ago when we first started CG. And I was, for those of you guys listening, I was telling Brian that I wake up and my team wakes up every day and ruthlessly and relentlessly tries to figure out how we bring additional value, deeper relationships, and more results for our clients. And 9 years ago, however long ago when I first started CG, I was like, how do I book a hotel room? And what is this BEO, this banquet order form, right? Like, I hope everybody comes because I'm trying to figure this stuff out, right? Like, I don't like the color of the carpet. Can we fix that before everybody shows up? And so I just didn't really, and I was also, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory, but I was framing what I was doing based upon a mastermind that I had been a part of.
Sure.
And it was extremely loose, without a lot of structure, very little discipline. I don't think a whole lot of thought around, how do we create results?
Yeah.
And because it is, creating results is far deeper than just sticking some smart people. That's networking, right? Oh man, this guy was there and he's cool. And I met him. I don't want people to meet, right? I want people to develop a relationship, do business together, have fun, and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that, if I could take you back, it was, I think that's why I was a disappointment, because I thought it was just like, man, I'm going to stick 10 people in a room and everybody's going to write a check and I'm going home and to the bank and everything's going to be great. And it just, I came to the realization that I had taken the first step into something that was going to be a long journey that required a massive amount of dedication.
What made you stick with it then? You obviously had to have seen something, some sort of potential either in yourself or in the people who were there. What made you stick with it and think that it would ultimately be successful?
Yeah, it was a like and a dislike. It helped me realize that that's the environment that I function better in, right? It helped me realize I'm a natural born connector. Mm-hmm. When if I could give you an example, when a Jim Zaspel, who's in the Collective Genius, is asking me how to put money to work, or and Scott Myers, who's in the Collective Genius, is saying, hey, I've got a new storage project coming up. You know, anybody who'd be interested in investing, right? My brain is always, right? Let me put A and B together and a deal comes together, right? Those guys have been invested. So it began to dawn on me that that's where I like to function at. Smaller environments, great at connecting. And I was coming out of a time where I was doing some stage, what's the word? Not stage, it's not stage speaking. There's a platform speaking. I was selling a product from stage, and I just, it helped me, starting CG helped me realize how much I disliked that aspect of the business. I'm very disconnected from that now, right? I don't go to a lot of events. I put on so many of my own. But at the time, there was a selling methodology that was, to me, seemed extremely manipulative and like
gimmicky.
You know, gimmicky, and it's like the presentation was psychologically built around like taking versus giving. And that's just not, I'm not like, I don't feel good about
it. But Jason, I understand what you're saying, but most people who might be listening to this would think, well, look, we're in business. There has to be a level of taking for us to be successful.
I completely agree with that, but how you take, and it is that taking precedent preceded by giving. And so, yeah, I want to make sure that what I'm saying is not misconstrued. I'm just like, oftentimes the presentations, the way they were framed, there was so much nonsense and so much gibberish and so much of it really wasn't the truth, right? Like for the next people that, you know, go to the back of the room, the first 10 copies we're going to discount by, and if there 20 people went back, you'd give them the same discount. Or if you told them you only had 6 copies of something, you had 600, like all that stuff. I couldn't, you know, I didn't, it just made me just want to like, you know, kind of, and I still, obviously there's persuasion involved in any business, right? But I think there's a way to do it when you truly start operating from your core, right? And being true to yourself and clearly defining what you stand for and what you stand against. Selling becomes a lot less than selling and much more about screening, if that makes sense, right? I get it when you're scrapping and you're struggling with money. You know, sometimes, you know, I got to do what I got to do. But when you get to a certain spot, you really want to get to a point where we don't sell at the Collective Genius, and we can talk about that later. It's really more of a screening process. We're going to do business with who we want to do business with, and we're not going to just simply take a telephone conversation of somebody, hey, I want to be a member of the Collective Genius. Well, you know, first of all, you need to pass for some very high standards from a business perspective. And then secondarily, from a culture perspective, we want to hang out with you for a couple of days before. Like, no, I want to pay you the money right now. Well, sorry, we're not going to take it. We want to spend a couple of days with you and figure out like if you're the right fit for us culturally. And so I think when you evolve into a place where you identify with what your beliefs are, and listen, we all make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I don't have, you know, the perfect set of beliefs. I make mistakes. I'm not trying to come across as preachy or teachy, but you get to a point in your life where you know what you stand for, you know what you stand against, and you know who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with, and you're unwilling to sacrifice your value set in exchange for dollars, right? And so I think, and that, I didn't feel I was in that spot when I was coming out of platform product selling, if you will.
So when you were platform selling like that, and obviously, you know, there's an element of it's honesty, but it's more just like maybe manipulation versus persuasion.
Yes.
Is what Robert Cialdini talks about a lot. Why did you do it? Just curious.
You know, at that time, again, I was in my mid-30s. Part of it was something, sometimes you think you want to do something until you do it, right? I don't think I fully understood everything that I just shared with you. And I think, you know, for me, it's funny because you can see a complete evolvement from that age of my life or that stage of my life till now. It was probably driven at that age of my life by ego, right? You're the guy, you're on stage, you're the people you're the guy or the gal up on stage, the speaker that everybody thinks is special. And the reality of it is the older I get, the more mature I get, and the more my business develops. Like, you're going to have a hard time going to the Collective Genius website and seeing a whole lot of Jason Medley on there, right? Like, there's not my picture plastered everywhere. There's not a bunch of videos about me. It's about my customers. It's about them. And so I think I did it at the time. I was a young guy in my 30s, just higher. And I thought it was something I do. And then when I got a decent understanding of what was involved in it, only at that point, until I figured that out, I realized, like, this is not for me, plus the travel component, man. I was for 7 months. I did it for about 7 months. I was on the road on the weekends a lot. And like, I knew that was going against the grain of what I truly wanted to build for myself in regards to my lifestyle. And so between that and the methodology of the selling that was taught to me, I just didn't like it, And I want to make sure too, like, there's some great platform speakers out there. I mean, I have some buddies of mine that are rock stars. They don't employ that same type of persuasive sell. There's been a lot of graduation and involvement since 10 years ago. Guys like Sean McCloskey, a good friend of mine. So I want to make sure everybody understands I'm not lumping everybody who's ever spoken from a stage in a box. That's not my intention. It's just kind of what I was taught or how to do it, and just realized, like, man,
totally.
That's not for me.
And there's a mutual friend of ours, Zach Childress, he was on our show, and we talked a lot about that, actually, how it's actually selling from stage has evolved. Like, just like sending people to the back of the room, really, I don't want to say it doesn't exist, but it's really the old way of doing things nowadays. It's kind of more frowned upon, and eyes are rolling, and it's less successful than, like you mentioned, a guy like Sean, who I've been to his speakers training. Like, I understand how to sell, like, from a guy like that. And it's like, that's like you said earlier. I love even what you said earlier is you don't sell, you screen. And I think that when we can start making that transition, that shift, people who are influential or coaches or mentors or whatever it is, leaders of masterminds, then there's just a huge shift in sales and dynamics. So
yeah, you got to reach a place of faith where you believe soul-heartedly in your product.
Totally.
That the cards are going to fall how they're supposed to fall.
Yeah, I agree.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't be an expert in your craft. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't study and get better at, your process, your sales cycle, or whatever. But being at peace with it versus trying to, it's just
totally.
Yeah.
Jason, let's talk about, you mentioned earlier that you said one of your greatest strengths is being a connector. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of my biggest strengths as well. Like, I really believe in networking. I think that to have any kind of influence at all, you need to be a people person. You need to understand, have the soft skills, understand that the biggest value you can provide other people is how you can make them successful. And if that means connecting them with the right person, then so be it. What's in it for you, Jason, for you to be that connector? Like, I'm talking about, let me qualify that just a little bit. I'm talking about before CG really got off the ground. I'm talking, go back to that first meeting again, the first one. Like, why did you even feel like that was important to do? And being a connector possibly had a lot to do with it, but what was in it for you there in the very beginning?
Well, I mean, just to be candid, when I first started CG, I didn't realize that it was something that I would become incredibly passionate about. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, it's my baby, right? I eat, live, sleep, breathe it. But at the time, like I mentioned earlier, it was kind of a side project. And I don't really know if right away in the beginning that the connectivity was something that I saw that I had a gift with. Mm-hmm. It was really, I understand the value of a network of, like, introducing and being connected to guys and gals who are playing at a certain level. And obviously when people join the Collective Genius, whether it's today or it was 9 years ago when I first started, I mean, there's a membership fee involved in joining, right? But I think what has happened over time is, like, the result of the connection has 10x'd. if that makes sense.
How so?
We were joking earlier about, the collective genius, kind of the OG, the original gangster in the real estate investing mastermind space. Well, after being in this for 9 years and really kind of starting out having focused on the highest level of players, the players that we have now versus maybe who we had 9 years ago, the ability for these guys to do deals, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that flow through the collective genius between members. And it's because they have the ability to do so, right? Literally, I just got off a call. A deal came across my desk. The gentleman needs to raise $3 million. The text I was trying to tell you, hang on, just let me get this text out before we get started today, Brian. That was to 2 of my other members, because I'm going to get on the phone with the 2 of them and him. We're going to raise that $3 million for that project. That wasn't happening 9 years ago, right? The story I literally referenced a moment ago about Jim Zaspel and Scott Myers, where, I won't, out of respect for Jim, I won't say the number, but a very substantial amount of money has been invested in Scott storage facilities. That wouldn't happen 9 years ago. It would have been more like, hey, let me introduce you guys. Y'all are both cool, and talk about how, how your system for how you manage your salespeople is different from his, and then improve your systems. Where it's now the connection still involves systems and processes and putting people together to go do office visits with each other, but the connections now have evolved into big deals. One of the 3 people the 2 people that I'm going to call for that $3 million raise, he probably deploys north of $30+ million inside of CG. And so one guy won $30 million amongst a bunch of other members, right? And so to me, that's how the level of connection has evolved. It's really, I got a way to put it. It's really started out in an information sharing type of structure. Let me put you guys together because you're doing this and he's struggling with that, and you're doing this and he's struggling. So I'll put you guys together. You can help one another, right? And although that is still very much a key component to what we do, the higher level aspect of it is big deals. And 2 weeks ago, I invested in 2 PPMs. One with Tim Bratz, who I'm sure a lot of people probably know that are watching your podcast. Another one's Randy Lawrence. Between the 2 of those deals, I think there were $350,000 between the 2 of them, and both on apartment complexes. And so, and then Randy didn't just get an investment from me, also from Sean Wolfswinkle out of Houston, who's a member of ours. And so everybody, the connections have just turned into this spider web of deal flow.
When did you realize, that's awesome, Jason. When did you realize that that's what a real mastermind needs to be versus the information type of stuff that you were kind of talking about in the beginning of it when it first started? Because that can't happen overnight. You just talked about.
What I'm trying to do, though, is think through the differentiation between the realization of it and it happening, right? Because it does not happen overnight, right?
Well, talk about the realization of it, because I think that obviously you as the leader, you have to implement that and make the culture of the group and the community, really, of the group go that way. When did you first realize that that's what it needed to be for CG to be successful?
Yeah. I don't know
how far into it.
I don't know that it needs that to be successful, but I think it needs that exemplifies the creation of a community, right? And so I think I don't know that I had an aha moment, right? But if I had to put a time frame on it, I might say maybe 2 years into it, because it kind of organically started to happen. Right? You kind of start like, no, wait a minute, this guy doing this. And so it began to help my brain function in a different way, instead of, hey, are you guys managing your construction out of Podio? Yeah, you got that dialed in, it's Rockstar? Sweet. I've got a guy coming out of Infusionsoft over here and wants to integrate Podio. So let me put you, it evolved. I would say maybe 2 years into it began to evolve from helping each other's restructures, systems, and strategies to when you start seeing some guy, oh wait, you lent him $250,000. Wait a minute, you just lent him $1.1 million on the deal. Well, and then back then nobody that I hung out with was doing syndications or private placements, or So I think a couple years into it, after you start seeing a couple people like actually doing stuff together, it dawned on me, it's a little difficult to fathom when you first think about it, because our members are scattered across the country, right? I could connect some dots of, a guy in Phoenix that's buying all his rental properties from somebody in Cleveland. And because he's buying all those rentals, he had to get more money from one of our members in New York. And so initially, when you think about like, what are a bunch of guys in different markets, how are they going to get together and actually do business together when they're all in different markets? It's a little bit difficult to kind of embrace. And but it does, it happens in droves. And so maybe 2 years into it, and then it's, I don't know that it's something my gift is connection, whether it's systems, processes, or, hey, you need to raise some money, or I've got all this appreciation in my rentals in Phoenix, and, my cap rates are starting to suffer. So I'm going to liquidate, and I want to start buying in the Midwest, because so I can get better cash flow until the market shifts back again. Who should I work with? Right. And so the connection is just, it's so much more than systems and strategies. It's knowing who does what their talents are, what their skill sets are. It's knowing who's working deals. It's, and it's just it's like any other skill set. It matures and sharpens over time. It's not even something that I know that I would try and force initially if I was starting a mastermind or building a community. I think it almost has to, because there's a trust factor, a community, a connection kind of fabric that has to be created before people start, doing stuff together.
No doubt about it. I totally.
It goes from, who is that guy to, oh, he's in CG? He's in CG? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts to carry some weight, I guess.
So Jason, we've joked a couple of times that the CG was the OG, right? But
right.
There are so many real estate investing specific masterminds out there today.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you start talking about the more popular ones, obviously aside from CG, you start talking about the ones that are most kind of out there in social media that you kind of see. Again, we don't have to name names, but it's probably pretty obvious to most people.
Sure.
Some, if not all, of these people came from the collective genius that are starting these other masterminds. Before we start, I do want to talk about that because I think it's important. I really do. I think that this subject's important. Again, we don't have to name names. But before we talk about that, you're really kind of mentioning as we go, without me asking the direct question, about what does it take to make a successful mastermind. And again, you've already kind of chopped in pieces a little bit of that. Do you have to have, over time, it's probably not going to happen right away, do you have to have this organic, higher level of bigger deals going on between the members, that community, for it to truly take off and be successful? Or can it be just information-based?
Yeah, I mean, it can be completely just information-based. I mean, business is business, right? I think when you're in the real estate space, that deal flow component is important, right? Or I should say it's an additional synergistic piece that separates it from, say you're in a general mastermind where you're sitting next to somebody that owns an e-commerce company, next to a guy who's a dentist with six offices, next to a guy that runs a fulfillment company, so they're all different businesses, right? And those businesses may not be conducive for deal flow or doing deal flow together, but it can certainly still be because business is business minus deal flow potential, right? I've helped a friend of mine here in Tampa get a mastermind off the ground. And I can sit in his room, and when an attorney goes up who works to mitigate IRS tax liens on individuals, and he's telling me that when he buys a lead off the internet that doesn't come into his office, he converts at 17% versus a walk-in from his hometown, right, converts at 72%. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know anything about IRS tax liens to ask him, IRS tax liens are on public record. Are you direct mailing people in your backyard that have IRS tax liens because you close at a 72% conversion rate versus buying off the internet at 17? And when he tells me no, he's not, I don't need to understand IRS tax liens to say, hey man, you should probably start doing that. So that's just marketing knowledge. That's not real estate specific, right? So I think there can be tremendous value in a mastermind, even if there's no potential for deal flow, if you will.
So why would someone join a mastermind? Just forget about CG for a second. Why would someone even join a mastermind? Obviously, it probably has a lot to do with the individual who's looking to join something, like what their specific needs are. But why would, say, someone who's doing so many deals a year need to join a mastermind and get into maybe a community?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two key things, right? Number one, it's results compression. Period. Results compression. Hey, I'm out here doing my thing. I flipped 72 houses last year, making money. Life is good. I want to flip 150 houses. Or, I've got 230 apartment doors and I want 2,300 apartment doors. And I'm a smart guy. I'm doing my thing, right? So, okay, well, if you're flipping 72 houses and you want to get to 150, maybe by yourself out there beating your brains out all on your own, trying to figure out, putting systems in place, how to hire the right people, how to keep accountability inside your organization, figuring out how to scale your lead gen, working on conversion, building out your customer site, trying to figure it out all by yourself. Maybe you go from 72 to 150 deals in 6 years, right? Go get in a mastermind where everybody in there can give you a piece of that they've already done, where they've already worked through that challenge. Hey, Ryan, your contract to close ratio is 19%. So if you go on 100 appointments, you're closing 19, and we're at 37. Oh my gosh, that's when you lean in, right? And you're like, can you tell me how you're doing that? Right? So whatever your issue is, there's somebody in a mastermind that can help you with those issues. And so what happens is I forget what I just said, your 7-year journey from 72 deals to 150 gets compressed into 24 months, right? Because all the things we're going to have to figure out by yourself, it all gets compressed because you don't got to figure it out by yourself. You show up to a group of highly talented individuals who've already been down that path and had to figure it out. They figured it out for you. Right. So you don't have to get your brains beat in. What happens when someone compresses your results and keeps you from making mistakes? You save time, you save money, right? And if you notice, I've mentioned, here's number 2, right? If you notice that I've mentioned many times, if you do it by yourself, it'll take 6 years. If you try to figure it out by yourself, that's number 2, right? Is number 1 is results compression, and number 2 is you join a mastermind because being an entrepreneur sometimes freaking sucks. It's lonely. You constantly have that chatter in your mind of, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? I don't know who to hire, right? I've got the budget, but do I hire someone in marketing first or operations, or that constant chatter of, oh, I'm already, I'm making 600 grand right now, and I think I can make 800 next year. But if I do that, I'm going to have to take this risk. Should I take that risk? I'm scared about taking that risk. What do I do? Oh my gosh, I'm not keeping my people accountable. I've built these compensation structures all wrong. How do I undo that when I've already did it? Like that constant chatter. And the reality of it is that a lot of us don't have anybody that we can share that with. Who's, who are you going to tell?
Especially when you're in your own market.
Yeah. Who are you going to tell? And not even that. Even if you tell, you're going to tell, just somebody, they're not being people you can have a conversation with, right? Where you can say certain things where they're not going to think you're like the example of what I just gave you. I made about 600 grand this year, and next year I think if I do this, this, and this, I can make 800. But I'm a little bit nervous about that. And the typical person who doesn't understand the journey, the risks, the work that you put in is going. Oh, you're going to go from making 600 to 800. That sounds like a real stressful, right? Yeah. And most people don't understand that, because sometimes that risk you take from go to 6 or 8 could destroy everything you've built or put your family in jeopardy. And there's a pressure and anxiety that comes with that. And so that going to a mastermind, it puts you in a place where people understand you. They understand that conversation in your mind. They understand the struggle. They understand the strain. They understand the reward when you push through and when you accomplish. And you can speak to those people in a candid, open way, and get some help. So for me, it's results compression, and number two, it's really about sometimes walking the entrepreneurial journey can be a very lonely spot.
Ain't no doubt. There's no doubt about that. So I just asked you, why should someone join a mastermind? And I'm going to get to all the ones that are popping up here in a second. But how do we choose, Jason? How, CG is obviously a great mastermind. Just, I can say that. I'm not in it, haven't been in it, but I can say that just because I know a lot of the people that are in it, and they're great people doing great things. But there are some other masterminds too where there's some great people doing great things. How do we choose which avenue to pursue?
That is a dicey question. A little bit. It is, yeah. It's a little bit dicey because it's obviously to focus on our strengths. It's going to make some assumptions, but the reason I say it's dicey is it's because of what you said earlier, right? Anybody out there that has one that you probably heard of came from CG. And so I'm gonna approach it this way. A lot of what I'm gonna share with you comes from the fact that we are 9+ years old, and a lot of the stuff that we've discussed takes a mastermind has to go through a maturing process for certain things to happen, right? I'm not saying that there aren't other people, for example, in other masterminds who are lending money or borrowing money to each other, but I will tell you that there's not another mastermind out there that there are hundreds of millions of dollars trading hands in deal flow, right? So if I were to take a look at how to choose, we make that choice easy because we only focus on a certain caliber of investor. A typical investor inside the Collective Genius, if we averaged out deal flow, is going to be doing well north of 100 deals a year. Most of them have substantial rental portfolios. Whether it's Dan Lane in Nashville with probably 120 units, Frank Cobb out of Richmond with 200, like Mike Osborne, who I was just texting with this morning, probably has 400 plus. So it's not that there aren't some other, folks doing decent stuff elsewhere. It's just that we make it easy to choose because we only are strictly looking for the absolute market leaders, right?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
So you say that, but you have a very limited amount of space for per market. So how are you able to have the very best when maybe you're limited per market and you have to turn away a lot of people just based on geography?
Well, I mean, very best is relative, right? Like you might have five top players in five big players in a market, and we might only take 2, right? And so our no button, we have a territorial denial button when someone fills out an application. If we have a territory issue, we hit that button and they get we really appreciate you for applying, but we don't have a spot open, right? And so obviously they go elsewhere, but you're asking me, how can they choose, right? That's one way to choose is we have territory restrictions. If you're looking for a place that you want a little bit more confidence in what you're saying, confidence I should say confidentiality. You're not going to be in the room with 6 other guys from your market. So if you want something that's a little more territory exclusive, where you don't have to be sitting in a room with your competitor, that might be something to think about. Your caliber, right? If you did 20 deals last year, there are other masterminds that you would be a great fit for, but not necessarily for CG, right? We have a very hard policy as far as the volume requirements. So I think the volume in which you're doing is a contributing factor in how you choose. I think established what you are really looking to gain from a mastermind, right? If it's just systems and resources, there's plenty of good masterminds out there. If you want to get in the mix and raise capital and deploy capital and do deals and buy apartment complexes together, and a lot of that stuff is not happening at a lot of masterminds, right? So you got to really assess what you're looking to get out of it. I think for a lot of people, travel is a consideration. Where are those masterminds held? I mean, we hold ours twice in Tampa, twice in San Diego. If you got 8 kids, maybe going to San Diego twice a year isn't your bag, right? Or maybe there's a mastermind that runs out of Texas, and you're like, well, twice a year to Texas is a lot less far than it is, to Tampa. So travel is a consideration. I think I think that, but what I would do is if you're really torn, get on the phone or go through the screening process with a couple of us. And, you're gonna more than likely address your challenges. And I think now we're getting somewhere, right? Get on the phone, go through the screening process, fill out an application, be honest and be candid about what your challenges are, be honest and candid about what you want to get out of the group, and let them tell you what's best for you,
Jason, before we go, I know you're up against the clock. I want to respect your time. Before we go, I really want to obviously I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I know we've had to reschedule a couple of times because of schedule conflicts. So I appreciate you making the time for this show. I want you to talk about last question. I want you to talk about generous genius. I want to talk about some great things that you're doing in the community, not just from a real estate investing, making money standpoint, but from giving back.
Sure. We have, obviously my organization is called the Collective Genius, but we have kind of a branch of Collective Genius, if you will, that we call the Generous Genius. And obviously we've talked a lot about building masterminds and connecting people, making money. And I love to make money and I love playing the game, but I love more than anything to give back, right? And to me, when you really boil it down and ask people what makes you happy, to me, it's making other people happy, right? And one of our when you look at what we stand for and what we stand against the Collective Genius, we believe that with blessing comes responsibility. And the way that we exercise that responsibility is through what we call the Generous Genius. And so we do a lot of different projects where, given the fact that we have a large group of members, a bunch of them run 501c3s, right? So they run nonprofits. And so what we do is we create the Generous Genius, which is a total the sense of debauchery for our group that we come together every year. I'll give you a perfect example, right? I'll tell you about December. That'll help you understand rather than me trying to explain it in abstract. But we sponsored Dave Payerton, who's a great member of ours out of Columbus, as well as Ken Corsini. Ken's little boy at 4 years old had cancer and has surpassed that, overcome it, dominated it, out of the woods, no remission. But they got involved in a foundation called Rock. That's his son's name, Rockstar Kids. And then Dave is part of the Lynn Foundation. And so what we do is we think about the parties, the characters involved. Okay, so the Lynn Foundation provides money for children who need experimental, medicine treatments that the insurance companies won't provide, right? Rockstar Kids is typically helping families who are dealing with when their children have cancer, right? So we look at the parties. We got doctors, insurance companies, we got children. And so we try to take all the parties and create a race of sorts, right, in which our members bet on the winners. And so in December of last year, we had a race where somebody says, Brian, I got $750 on you. You've got to dress up like the baby. And so then somebody else might say, okay, I've got $1,200 on John Larson over here who's got to dress up like the insurance man or the doctor, right? And so we create these heats. So at the end, you got a costume, a doctor's costume, right? And so you got to get dressed as fast as you can in the doctor's costume. You got to go jump through some hula hoops, right? Jumping through the hoops of the insurance company. You pick up a letter which says denied on it, and you hand it to the baby, who opens it up, and he's in his baby onesie, right? We had everybody in baby onesies, pacifiers, the whole nine. The baby sees a denied letter. He jumps through 2 hoops, goes down, and we had cardboard cutouts of businessmen who were the insurance guys. He kind of punches the insurance guys, And he takes the bucket at the end where everybody had placed their bets and runs back to the end of where the race started. And everybody, there was 5 lanes, right? 5 sets of racers. And once we had the racers in line, the remaining people who weren't a doctor or a baby in the heats would actually put their money in buckets to see who they thought was going to win. We take all the losing money and put it into a bucket, which goes to the charity. And then each winner's bucket for each race, we put in a winner's bucket. And at the end of the night, we draw a ticket out, and whoever's name is on the back gets to keep the amount in there. It's never happened. The winner always gives it to charity. And so we typically raise between 120 and 130,000 bucks. However, this year we have a monstrous goal. I'm so glad you asked me about this, because I'm going to be asking you. Anybody who's an influencer in the real estate space, this year we want to double our goal. We want to raise $250,000. We are extremely transparent. We show all the distributions that go to the Lynn Foundation or to Rockstar Kids. We also have another gentleman I mentioned earlier, Scott Myers. He builds homes in Ensenada for the people in Ensenada that will never be able to afford housing. So all the distributions are screenshotted, shared, bank account information shown. It's very transparent. But we want to take the influencers like Brian Trippe, right? And what we're doing, we're going to put a package together. This has just been birthed about 3 weeks ago. We're going to put a package together of things that we can give to real estate investors. Like we have the top economic forecaster to all the hedge funds and the REITs in the United States of America come to CG every December. And he talks about his forecast for this in December was for 2019. It's coming December to be 2020. But so we're going to live stream his telecast about what he sees when he looks into his crystal ball. We're going to have a bunch of people add some courses and so forth to that. And so for like a minimum donation, we don't know what that is. Again, we birthed this about 3 weeks ago here in the office to figure out how do we take this to $250,000. For a minimum donation, I don't know, 50, 100 bucks, whatever, people will get access to a live stream of that economic forecast, maybe a few other things from CG. And then, if you had a course, Brian, or something that you could throw in the mix. And so about a month out from our December meeting, we're going to have a lot of the leaders in our space send out promotion about, hey, we're all getting behind the Generous Genius this year for a minimum donation. Here's what you're going to get. As soon as you make your donation, you'll get your tax receipt in addition to access to all of these real estate resources, and you'll get access to the live stream economic forecast for 2020 from John Burns, who's, like I said, he's the guy for all the big hedge funds and REITs across the country. And so then once we raise that money, we distribute it evenly among the 501(c)(3)s that we sponsor, our members sponsors. And bigger than that, if you want a chance to serve, right? Even if it's not money, right? I don't care if you have $1 or no dollars. If you want a chance to serve, any of those, reach out to us, right? Our members go on those trips to build those houses. Our members build those houses in Mexico. A bunch of our members and their daughters are going down to Guatemala in June, right after a CG meeting for a mission trip. So, like, if you want to be involved in any way, shape, or form, whether it's donating 50, 100 bucks to get some resources or just to come and serve, I don't really have I guess you could PM me on Facebook, send me a Facebook Messenger or something like that. But so, yeah, we're looking for folks who have influence, a list, a podcast, who would like to join forces with us this year. We're not here to hog the spotlight. CG, the Generous Genius, it'll be a concerted effort. It'll be a lot of fun, and it will be an epic, we're going to share everything with everybody that they want to share it on social media, the funds, how they get distributed, the whole 9 yards. So that's the Generous Genius.
Awesome stuff. And I can tell in the passion in your voice, and you're so passionate about talking about this. To do a mastermind, Collective Genius is obviously an incredible mastermind, and that's great. But to really start to make an impact on the world is, I feel like you're talking about, getting wiser as you get older. Those are the kinds of things I personally want to get more involved in, is how can I make that impact, that eternal impact in the world? And I think that's what you've found as well as you got a little bit older too. So, well,
awesome. And I'll sum it up with this, because I know you're getting ready to cut, but like, happiness is a feeling. different things in life bring us different feelings, right? And we've talked about masterminds and making money and all that kind of good stuff. And at the end of the day, you either will or already have reached a point. I'm sure there's people on this podcast that have plenty of money. There's people on here who are trying to get to a spot where they feel like they have plenty of money. But at the end of the day, you can't replace how helping somebody makes you feel, because the buzz of money will wear off. I'm not Donald Trump or Warren Buffett or anything like that. And I absolutely enjoy making money and taking care of my family and that kind of stuff. But it does not give me a rush anymore, right? It's more the building of something that gives me a rush. And so that's what generous genius is. If you're looking to get a rush, right? Because that's when you're rich, it's when you feel emotionally moved, right? That's what makes you rich. And money will only do that for so long. So, don't lose sight of that.
For sure. Great work.
Yeah. Don't lose sight of that.
Jason, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you guys. Go to thecollectivegenius.com. And if you're in a market and you feel like you're doing that deal volume that Jason talked about earlier, you feel like this culture that Jason's been describing, you feel like that's something that fits who you are, go to thecollectivegenius.com, fill out the application, and go through their process and see if CG is the right fit for you and if you're the right fit for CG. It works two ways. Can't thank you enough, Jason, for coming on the show, providing tremendous value. I appreciate you answering the tough question. Yeah. And I appreciate you answering the stuff that you're passionate about. You told me last time we spoke that passion equals success. You gave me a book to read. I'm in the process of cracking open the culture code as well.
Yeah.
So we didn't really get to talk about culture that much, but maybe we'll have you back on the show again at a later date, and we'll talk more about culture and community. But
all right, my friend.
So much. Appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate it.
Guys, we love you. Hit the subscribe button. We've got some incredible guests lined up. Jason was incredible. We got some more awesome guests lined up too. So hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss who we got coming up next. We love you. We'll see you next time.